This is the notes for Unit 1, adding rational numbers. Let's go back to integers before we add in fractions and decimals. Okay, so a rational number is any number that exists. So it could be a fraction or a decimal. Let's look at just our integers though first. So starting with 3 plus 10 is 13. When I have -3 plus -10 though, I'm 3 in debt and 10 in debt. Altogether, I would be 13 in debt. So our first big idea was that when they have the same sign, I am going to add them. You can highlight that if you want. If they have the same sign, I need to add them. Okay. If they have different signs though, I'm actually going to subtract them. Then I keep the sign of my bigger number. So in the example of 4 plus -7, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4 positives with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. So 4 minus 7 doesn't work. I'm going to flip them and do 7 minus 4. That's okay. 4 of them have canceled, leaving me with 3. And which one has the bigger sign? I had more of my negatives. Okay. So again, I'm looking for, do they have the same sign or different signs? They had different signs, so I subtracted them, and I looked for which one had more. In the example of -4 plus 7, now I have 4 negatives, but 7 positives. Very similar result. Positive and negative numbers cancel each other out. I end up with 7 being bigger than 4, so it is okay to switch them. In my head, I'm thinking, what's 7 minus 4, which is 3? And then just be careful at the end. I need to keep the sign of the bigger one. I had more positives than I had negatives, so I ended up with a positive 3. Notice how in both of these, the positives and the negatives cancel each other out. Even though it says add, I actually subtracted those two problems. But what was different is this one had more negatives, this one had more positives, and it just changed the sign of my final answer. All right, so let's try it here with the harder ones. If I have 12 negatives and 19 positives, I can draw out all those minuses and all those pluses. You're also free to use a number line if you want to start at -12 and then count up 19. But I know that these are different signs, so I'm going to subtract them. 9 minus 2 is 7. 1 minus 1 is 0. So 19 minus 12 is 7. And I have more positives than I do negatives. So my final answer is just going to be 7. They were different signs, so even though it said add, I subtracted them, and I kept my sign of the bigger. Okay, with the fractions and decimals, now we're going to have an extra step. If it is a fraction, my first step is to make a common denominator. Here's why. A half would look like this. A fifth would look like that. Do my slices of pizza match? No, a half is bigger than something cut into fifths. So I cannot add these and get 4/7. Okay, what I'm going to do is make common denominators. So on a multiplication chart, I'm going to look across the row for 2 and across the row for 5. The first thing they have in common would be 10. Okay, so how I got that was 2 times 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 times 5 made 10. But notice, now when it's cut up into 10 slices, that one I had also got taken times 5. So when I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So -1/2 becomes -5/10. Same thing over here. Each of my 5s are going to now get taken by half. So 5 times 2, cut it up into 10 slices. So the 3 I have also get taken times 2 for -6. Now we can go back to our integers. My common denominator is going to stay. My pizza is being cut up into 10 slices. But how many do I have? 5 and 6. The signs match. They're both in the whole. So I get to add them and keep that same sign. 5 plus 6 is 11. And my negative stays the same. Final answer, though, is if you can change that into a mixed. 11 goes into 10 one time, so I have a whole pizza with one slice left over. Okay. Make sure that negative sign is out in front of your whole number 1. Okay, so I don't end up with a whole number and just the fraction part negative. You'll always have the negative sign out in front of your fraction. Alrighty, next one. We have 2.3 plus negative 3.5. Every time I'm going to stack my big decimal on top, just like I did here. It does not matter which number came first. I always put my bigger number up on top. Then I ask myself, are they the same signs or different signs? Well, now we're back to different signs. This one was positive. This one was negative. So my positives and my negatives cancel each other out. I'm at 2 and I go down 3 on my number line. I should get to about negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract them. 5 minus 3 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Decimal comes straight down. Final answer. Did I have more positives or negatives? Well, we just said it had more negatives. So I'm looking for 1.2. Okay. So my extra step with a decimal is the big one goes on top, and I have to line up those decimal places. If it's a fraction, I make common denominators. Okay. Let's try one more of both those. So if I have 3 2/5 plus 3/4, let's just start there. What do 5 and 4 have in common? I'm thinking 20. I go across the row for 5 and across the row for 4. So 5 times 4 made 20. So 2 times 4 on top would make 8. Over here, 5 times 4 made 20. So if I had to do the bottom times 5, the top gets taken times 5, and I would get 15. I have to have the bottoms match in order for my pizza slices to line up. So now that they're both out of 20, I can go ahead and add them. I had a whole number 3. 8 plus 15 was 23. Bottom stays the same of 20. Okay. Yes, this is improper, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it because I do have another fraction here. Okay. So we're back to something not out of 20. So my first step is I need to make them out of 20. 5 times 4 made 20. So 1 times 4 on the top. 1/5 is the same as 4 out of 20. Now I can do my obturation. I wanted to have 3 positives plus 2 negatives. Same sign or different signs? Different. So positives and negatives have canceled each other out, leaving me with just 1. So even though it says add, I'm going to actually subtract these. 3 minus 2 is 1. 23 minus 4, 19. Final step, is it positive or negative? I have 3 positives with 2 negatives, so I have more of my positives. So I'm going to end up with 1 and 19/20. Okay. Again, if you want to make a little note there to the side, or you should have some room below it here. First step is common denominators, so I have to make these 2 match. Second step is, do they have the same sign or different signs? Since they were the same, I went ahead and added these. But since these ones were different, that's why I subtracted them. Okay. Final step, which one did I have more of? Positives or negatives, that'll tell you that final sign. All right. And with our decimals, usually I stack them on top. So I would have 3.8 and 2.1 like that. I noticed something here though, right off the bat. Did anyone else happen to see it? What's negative 2 plus 2? If I have 2 negatives with 2 positives, aren't those just going to cancel each other out? So you don't even have to worry about adding these and then subtracting these. My answer is simply negative 3.8. Just a little shortcut there in that one. You're welcome to add these. They both have the same sign, so I'd get negative 5.9. But then when you subtract it, because this one's negative and 2.1 was positive, you're just going to get right back to negative 3.8. Okay. For our last two over here, you'll notice we have an x and a y. The x is simply going to go right here. So negative 1/3. And my y is going to go in where my y was. So negative 1/3 plus 5/3. First step, do I already have a common denominator? Yeah, we lucked out. They're both out of 3. So then, do they have the same sign or different signs? I see a negative and a positive. So they are different, so I'm going to subtract them. 5 minus 1 is 4. My common denominator will stay. I had more of my positives, so this would be my final answer, but since it's a fraction, I'm going to go ahead and make it into a mixed number. 3 would go into 4 once, and I would have 1 left over. Okay. Same thing here for my last one. So it says a plus b, where a is 4.1. So I'm just putting that in for a. And then we want to add b, which is negative 2.7. So he's going in there for b. With my decimals, which one is bigger? Well, 4 is bigger than 2, so I'm going to go ahead and put 4 on top. Second question, are they the same signs or different signs? 4 positives and 2 negatives are different. So even though it says add, we are going to subtract them. The reason why I need my bigger decimal on top is because I'm going to have to borrow. I cannot do 1 minus 7. So I'm going to take a whole dollar away and give myself 10 dimes. So then I'd have 11. 11 minus 7 is 4. 3 minus 2 is 1. Final step, do I have more positives or more negatives? I started with more positives, so even though I went back on my number line, I'm still in my positive. 1.4. Okay. While you're finishing writing, we'll just say it one more time from the top. If I want to add them, they have to have the same signs. If I want to subtract them, they are different. Okay. Your extra step, though, is if they're a fraction, they have to have common denominators. If they're a decimal, you need to put the bigger one on top and then line up those decimal places. Okay. So ask yourself, do they have common denominators, or is my decimal place lined up? Then think about them as integers. Same signs, I go ahead and add them. Different signs, I would subtract them. Great job today, guys.